Jodi was talking about, how important it is to have a sort of an unbiased, impartial, objective vent buddy. And I
Right.
suppose that could be, somebody that you're related to, but
It depends.
there's a line. Yeah, if your vent buddy is going to be your significant other, or your
Careful.
best friend for that matter, there are boundaries you've got to set.
Murphy's saying that because this strikes a chord
It
with
does.
us because it goes back to the beginning of our relationship. Okay, so
Let's rewind the clock, Sam.
yeah.
Well, that's got to be at least 20 years.
It does. And we're not talking about you, Sam. You've never done this. But whenever Murphy and I first got together, when we were first a thing, especially after we first got married, you had not long before that been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Yes.
And, I mean, you had a lot to vent about. But when I tell you in the beginning of our marriage, there were some times when you were a very venty person, so much so that there were times I was like, oh my gosh, I know we're newlyweds, but I got to be alone.
Yeah. Well, and because I went from venting to dumping. Mm-hmm. And as being a venter, I became a dumper and a spewer.
I never thought of it that way. But
You never thought of me as a dumper and a spewer? That's
I just
kind of what I
wasn't
became.
labeling it that way. I wasn't going to
Are
label
these counseling terms?
it that way. These are Murphy terms.
He's the dumper.
Right. Well, yeah. And I did not realize this. That's what's really weird about venting. If you're not careful, then it becomes habitual.
Habit.
Mm-hmm. And I had a counselor explain that to me at that time, because I actually did go see somebody because I was dumping everywhere. It was beyond venting. Because I was upset about having the diabetes. Very difficult to manage that. I had quit smoking for my own benefit because I had diabetes, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. That is difficult for anybody that's ever done that. That's why I sympathize with anybody that struggles with that.
It's
I'm
a
sorry,
lot
I'm beating on the counter here. Bailey doesn't like me to beat on the counter because the camera's
shaking the cameras. Venting.
But anyway, when I went to the counselor just to see about that, she was just explaining to me, how you're handling that. And it's one thing to vent, but when you get in that, the reason it becomes a habit is because your brain gets tricked into thinking it's some sort of sense of accomplishment. You're somehow controlling the situation by venting and grinding and complaining and whatever, everything else that goes with it.
One thing that you used to say about it is, I need to express myself, and you're my best friend.
I know.
And I remember thinking, yes, but, I don't want this to be what our life is. And I was probably a party to that in the beginning, because when we were just seeing each other and just really good friends, I think was when you were diagnosed, and I was there. I went with you for you to give yourself your first shot. So when I tell you, it was almost set up to where I was his person to lean on with trying to accept that. It was set up that way, that I was your rock in those days.
Yeah.
And I was happy to do that. But as like 1 year, 2 year, hey, we're newly married, you don't get to hit the door and just dump everything on me, because then what's left of me? I just felt like, okay, is this what it's going to be like for him to come home every night?
You don't realize it's it becomes one-sided, and you don't intend it to be that way. But, I think that's that beginning of the whole process of taking ownership of the fact that I've got something I can't control. That sound familiar, Sam?
Yeah.
That's the reason I think I was able to manage quitting drinking, is because I had to manage type 1 diabetes the same way. You have to get to a point of acceptance. And, here's 20 years later, I still don't accept it. No, I do. It's just the... I couldn't do anything about it. You know what I mean? It was really weird.
It's an everyday thing.
It was the wrong kind of coping tool, right? I mean, it went from casual, complaining to catching myself and saying, wow, now it's pouring out of me in a very frustrated way. That's dumping. That's not venting. Venting is having a conversation. Dumping is when all the emotion gets poured into it, too.
And it's like you gave it to me. And I felt like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Well, you received it, too. And that was part of the problem. So
I'm sort of a sponge.
Right. So we both had the giving-receiving problem,
good old days.
You were catching what I was throwing when you really should have been letting it bounce off your back. These are all my psychological terms.
Right.
Okay.
Why don't you just open up your own counseling office? No, but...
And the other side of that, too, is if a person just like that, if they enable you to be the constant dumper, it's not helping you.
No, it's not.
If they gripe along with you, or they have that kind of stuff.
It's hard to know. It's all, and someone explained it to me after this time, that it's all about boundaries. Okay, I needed to have better boundaries. Like, yes, I love you. I'm sorry that you're having a bad day with your blood sugar, but I can't, help you right now, is what I needed to learn to say. I'm going outside to do, yoga or walk the dogs. I needed to learn to say that. But because I was your best friend, we were, new together, I wanted to be there for you. So there was a lot of sort of blurred lines. Is that what, it was just sort of a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot from that too, to try not to be a sponge. And it's very difficult when you're that close to someone. You've seen it happen, Sam. I can be in a fine, great mood, and then he walks in, and when I say he, I mean Murphy. If you walk in the room, and if you're having a stressful day, part of me is in that with you because you're mine. You're my husband. So it's kind of like, but it's not mine to take on.
No, it isn't.
Your emotions are not mine to take on. That's all part of me taking care of me. This is so heavy. I know it's so deep and heavy.
Well, I think the simplified point is that it took time. It's like anything. When you stick with it and you learn and you grow, eventually you begin to own your own space. I think part of that is when and I don't know,
we
I don't
work
know
together
why.
Too.
Well, and that can make it challenging. But there's just something about coming out of your teen years and even into your 20s. There's so many places in our lives that we have things together, but I think we're still trying to figure out who we are.
Sure.
And so we don't really own our space. It's pretty easy to, when things get tough, you want to just kind of share it. You know what I mean?
If you've always been in the role, for me, not always been in the role, but if you've been that person that people go to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It becomes too much. Oh, yeah. You were well, because before I came along, you were in that role in a lot of different areas.
In another area in my life, I was the person that was
the go-to,
leaned on, talked to about, and so I kind of felt like it was my lot in life, my place to make things better. And that just became, it got to where I was not looking forward to you coming in and at the end of the day and dumping on me.
Yeah.
And so we had to have some come to Jesus discussions about it. But we made it through it. And we have better, healthier boundaries now because of it.
Well, and that's why I think having you are my best friend, obviously, and so we will share in it's the comfortable space. It's the safe space for you and I to vent to each other, as long as we're not dumping on each other.
Yeah.
But then you also have, it's good to have friends and then unbiased people who are not afraid to point you back when you get off track. And I value all of those,
That's why probably counseling would be good for every single person
it always
in this
is,
world.
Yeah.
If you are living in this world, if you have love, a family, relationships, you probably could benefit from counseling. I have a friend or dear friend, and I won't mention who she is or whatever, but she's very educated. She has a very good life, but she's been through some tough stuff recently, and she started going to counseling. And she even said, I've been going for 2 years now, but I still go. And sometimes we don't talk about anything. I just talk. It's like sometimes it's not always heavy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just light and ha-ha. But she just finds that she needs it. I think that's cool.
So your vent buddy can be somebody that you pay, or as a best friend or a spouse or a significant other?
No,
you have to listen to me because I'm paying you.
Or a mom or dad.
It does need to be somebody who you feel is a non-judgmental source of support. You can just say, this is what's going on, and there it is.
What's funny now that I think about it, because my mom was always very protective of all of us, but she was tough to vent to because she would get riled up, probably because of what you're saying, Jodi. She would start to own it.
She was a rescuer.
So it was very difficult, right, exactly, to just express something because she would immediately then want to do something about it. That was her personality.
Yes.
And it's funny now to think about that. Of course, she's no longer on the planet, but I had to learn kind of early along. It was nothing personal against my mom. I love my mom to death, but she wasn't one of those people that I could vent all things to without it kind of becoming even more stressful. Make sense?
Yeah.
You, however, Jodi, are a joy. There's.
I'm so glad.
And on that note, can I vent?
Yes, Sam.
You actually do have a safe space to vent with us, and you do some, Sam. You do. I don't think you realize that, but we all do together. We have shared experiences that we vent. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Producer Bailey?
Yeah, I could agree.
Yeah, we all have the shared experiences that we can not agree on, but that we all.
And by shared experiences, you mean every one of Sam's previous relationships?
No. But you Listen, we know a lot about your life, and you are in a non-judgmental space with us.
Okay,
You do.
all right.
You do vent here.
Do I need to pay y'all now? Or
No, not at all.
No, it's what friends are for, as long as it
Uh-oh.
doesn't cross those boundaries, which it doesn't. I don't ever feel heavy from your
Yeah.
vents.
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever dumped.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Honestly, my mom is probably my vent buddy,
Oh, nice.
because I can tell her anything and there's no judgment. There's not. I mean, you get advice you don't really want sometimes, but
Does she agree with everything too?
no, not
You're
all
right.
the
That's the
time.
raw end of the deal, honey.
I told you I didn't like her.
As long as she, I've heard her say that sort of stuff about your exes, Sam.
Yeah.